So, we saw the unboxing. Hang on a second, I gotta do this real quick. We saw the unboxing of the CJRB and Artisan knives that came in today. You guys might know that I had the RIA come in a while ago. Well, with the RIA were the Predators. One of them was given an eco, one stayed with me. One of them I'm giving away to you guys. But in that box, there was something I haven't talked about yet, and that is the CJRB Crag. So this is a cleaver that uses their recoil lock. So without any further ado, let's go ahead, we'll talk about it. It's kind of a unique knife, so if you're happen to be watching on headphones, turn down the music because here comes the volume. Let's just go with that. So you guys know Artisan Cutlery. I'm having my knife produced by Artisan Cutlery. Well, with Artisan Cutlery, like a lot of other companies, they have their main brand of Artisan. Then they have kind of their budget line, which is CJRB. So this is the CJRB Crag, and it uses what they call a recoil lock. Now, the recoil lock is a lock that is really similar in a lot of respects to the Axis lock. But in my opinion, it's a little bit more similar to the Shark lock that's on the new AD 8010, not 8015, it's 8020, 8020 or 80. That's what it is. At any rate, the Shark lock by Demco. It's kind of similar to it. I don't like it as much, but this knife is a really nice shaped knife. It's just got some minor issues. Most of them being, in my opinion, with the lock. But we'll get into that. So we're going to look at the CJRB Crag. Let me get this set up. We'll get some weights. I got some specs. We'll get the scale set up so we can take a good close look at it from the top down. All right, let's take a quick look at it. This is not an unattractive knife. It's well built. It's got a really nice blade shape. Cleaver-esque. It's comfortable in hand. This is your lock release right there. That's why I say it reminds me a lot of the Shark lock that Demco uses, because it doesn't stick up as high, but it definitely has the same kind of feel. Now, it's kind of like, I guess you could say it's more like a Axis lock than it is like the Shark lock, but it's not a bad lock. It's comfortable. It is a flipper. It does run on bearings. And as you can see, the nice thing about it is there is no lock bar. There's no fumbling around, getting your hand in the travel. You just simply grab it like this, and then you can drop it down. I have to raise this. Hang on a second, guys. I got to raise this up. That knife's bigger than I thought. I'll give us a little altitude, and I got the ring light turned on to drive away some of those nasty shadows. So you can see, without a lock bar or a liner lock, nice clean lines, well centered. It is D2 steel. And like I said, it has this Axis lock type of lock. But let's go ahead, let's look at some of the specs. So what you're looking at here is you are looking at an overall length of 8.1 inches with a 3.5 inch blade length in, like I said, D2, as you can see there. Blade thickness of 0.125. And they've got it listed as a net weight of 4.88 ounces or 4.9 ounces. So let's get the scale set up and we'll take a look at the actual weight on it in grams and things like that. We'll do some size comparison. All right, we're back. So I know that it's late in the day, so I'm getting some weird light. I apologize, guys. It's actually 4 o'clock in the afternoon, way later than I usually shoot. So let's go ahead and look at some weights. So they say it is 4.88 ounces. This is probably going to come up right at about 4 7/8, which is about 4.9 ounces. In grams, that translates to 140 grams for those of you that don't use Freedom units. You know who you are. So let's get that. Now we got all that stuff out of the way. So this knife, I'm not gonna lie to you, this knife is a lot of fun. It is. The only thing like I can really say that I wish they'd done on this is maybe make this a little taller and not have done it as a flipper. I understand the reasoning behind it being a flipper, and that's it right there. That flipper tab winds up becoming a safety thing. It comes down and it keeps it from slamming on your finger. It's gonna act like, oh, well, there's other names for it, but we won't get into it. The only issue with it is you can easily, because it doesn't have an actual detent like you would expect in a flipper.
Happens when I'm editing sometimes. I realize there's something that just needs to be said really quick. So right here, I was talking about, I wish they hadn't done it as a flipper. This knife, the Crag, would have been, I think in my own personal opinion, I think it would have been better if it had had thumb studs. Or maybe both. We'll address that in the future. I think I'm gonna borrow one of those add-on thumb studs from my buddy that has some, and we're gonna see how it feels as a thumb stud operator with that lock. I think that would have been a good option. Maybe not necessarily take away the flipper tab, but add in a thumb stud.
Which I don't currently have. I do have a flipper. So, yeah, you haven't seen this yet. So on this, you overcome that detent and it just flies open. This has a little bit softer action. As far as the action, that's the only issue with it. And if you give it a good flick, oh, see, I'm trying to do that with my Benchmade 940. I try to use a lock bar. If you give it a good light switch, as opposed to trying to do it as a push button, you're gonna get some pretty good action. If you try to push button it, it's just gonna do that. If you try to just push in on it, you're never gonna get it where you want it. And then, like, to close it, you have to push in on the lock. It doesn't just drop shut. So just some minor things, like you have to kind of flick it down if you're doing it that way. As far as blade shape and everything like that, in hand, the ergos on this are great. Does have a versatile pocket clip, G10, blue G10, textured G10 scales. The knife is done really well, and especially for a budget knife. So pocket clip, I'm not a huge fan of the pocket clip, but it's not horrible. I can get by that pocket clip. As long as these deep carry pocket clips are not super tall, like they come in thin and then stand up really tall with a high loop at the back where you get that change. I'm not horrible about it. It's the ones that come down low and then have the big sweeping loop at the end, where it's taller at the end than it is at in the actual clip. So the pocket clip, like I said, reversible, not a problem. All Torx hardware, steel liners. It is a standoff, not backspacer. I am a fan of full backspacers because I carry a lot of stuff in my pocket, and sometimes change and things can get up in there. However, the majority of my knives these days are not backspacer knives. They are standoff knives because none of my Ferrum Forges have backspacers. The majority of my knives no longer have actual backspacers. They have standoffs like this. So as far as blade thickness and edge angle, I'm not gonna lie to you, all of the Artisan knives I have gotten come incredibly well sharpened from the factory. I'm gonna have to say they're up there with those as one of the companies that when a knife comes in, I have not had to resharpen it. The only reason I resharpened the Rhea so many times was because it got used so much. Oh, and then just in an offshoot update, I took this knife and hammered it through 1.5 millimeter copper wire. And I'm not saying I hammered it through like braided wire, like a solid piece of 1.5 millimeter copper wire. So that steel's incredible. But this is in their D2, which not a big fan of D2, but their D2 is pretty good. I haven't had the issues with any of their knives in D2 or the QSP Penguin in D2, where they rust like some of my other knives in D2. Are they going to? Eventually, yes. So yeah, the action on this, like I said, the action is a little soft and it takes a little bit of getting used to, But once you get used to it, it's great. The lock is not horrible. You can't really do it like you would an axis lock where you swing it out, but definitely on closing you can. So fit and finish, really good. Even on the CJRBs, but the budget line CJRB fit and finish on these knives are pretty good. They're pretty good. So let's go ahead, let's turn this around. We'll do some final thoughts on this. All right, guys, I was just looking through stuff, and luckily I caught it before I put the video up. We never did our size comparison. Well, I did, but it just didn't record. So, some size comparisons. That is the CJRB Crag. Oh, bump the tripod. And we're going to use a couple knives that are pretty well known. That is the CRK Sabenza, and this is the Spyderco Endura. As you can see, the Spyderco Endura, big knife. It's not a little knife though. This is not a small knife. Comparison wise, you're looking at relatively I mean, it's almost spot on in blade length, or I mean in length to the Sabenza. The Sabenza might be just a hair longer, but this is a really like a broad blade, good for a lot of cutting. So now we will go back and edit and get this up. So, some final thoughts on this. I absolutely think this is a really good knife. I'm not such a big fan of the lock, but then again, I'm not a big fan of the axis lock. So you can kind of see where that would happen. In hand, really comfortable. This is probably not a knife I would purchase, but if it was given to me, I would not complain. Now, I will tell you, I don't like it as much as I like this one, which is the Mastiff, and it's just because of it's not so much to do with a difference in blade shape or anything like that, or that this is of a higher quality and higher fit and finish. It's not. It has everything to do with the action. I'm a fan of that action. If I'm gonna have a big beefy blade like this or a cleaver like this, there's something I'm gonna want from it, and that just happens to be a little bit soft. Now, it is very smooth. So I gotta say, pound for pound, CJRB, the knives coming out of Artisan through their CJRB brand have got to be some of the best budget knives that are out there right now. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm working with Artisan. I'll tell you the same thing that I tell about Chris and Elliot's knives. If it's a bad design or if it's shoddily made, I'm gonna let them know. Like, I honestly told Elliot, I do not like the mini Archbishop that they released. I don't like it at all. And it has nothing to do with it not being a good knife. It has everything to do with ergos in my hand, the way it feels, things like that. So, you know, it's the same knife as my Archbishop, only shrunken down. So, you know, if these knives weren't good, one, I wouldn't have Artisan making this for me. And two, I would definitely tell you, because that has been the whole premise of this channel since I started, was to give you guys my opinions on stuff, because I know a lot of you guys feel the same way as I do about some of this stuff. So it's letting you get an honest impression from me of how I feel about the knife. Now, I've carried this a bunch. I usually like to carry a knife for a week or two before I do it. I've actually carried this over the last, I'd say, I got this the same time as the Rhea, so it's been getting carried and used along the same amount of time as the Rhea. It cuts really well. The edge on this, their D2 holds an edge really well. I have not had to sharpen this yet, and it's been used a good bit. So D2 steel, like I said, not my favorite. I wish they would have went with something that was a little bit more rust resistant, but D2 will take a screaming edge and hold it fairly well. So guys, that's it. The CJRB Crag, not a bad knife at all, and it's fun. It's a fun little knife. When you get that lock figured out and the action figured out, it is a lot of fun. It's a fun little knife to play with, and it's a really nice blade shape, and it does a lot of good cutting just because of blade shape. And like I said, it's ground well and it's not really thick. So Guys, if you're interested, if you're looking for a knife, look for these CJRB knives. They're knocking out of the park with their budget stuff. So, with that being said, guys, stuff in the corners. If you like the videos, give them a thumbs up. If you really like them, there's an applause button. And if you didn't like the video at all, let me know. You can give it a thumbs down. That's still an interaction. I need to know these things, but I just would like to know why. And if it's just that you don't like me, well, you can keep that one to yourself. So, all right, guys, love you all. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time. It didn't work this time. We're going to try it.